Good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson. For decades, the United States viewed China primarily as an economic competitor. Well, today, under Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist Party is pursuing something much bigger. They're expanding their influence while challenging America's leadership around the world. That concern has taken on new urgency as conflict continues in the Middle East. President Trump recently said that Xi personally assured him China would not provide weapons to Iran. Yet reports have surfaced that Chinese-made shoulder-fire air defense missiles, they're headed to Tehran. At the same time, senior U.S. officials continue warning about growing cooperation between China, Russia, and Iran. It's raising questions about whether America's principal adversaries are becoming increasingly aligned. But China's ambitions extend beyond geopolitics. The Communist Party demands absolute loyalty to the state. That leaves little room for any competing authority. Across China, independent churches have been shut down. Pastors have been imprisoned, Bibles censored, and Christians pressured to place allegiance to the Communist Party above their faith in Jesus Christ. The CCP understands that people whose highest loyalty belongs to God cannot be fully controlled by the government. So what do these developments tell us about China's long-term ambitions? Is Beijing simply pursuing its national interest, or are they working to reshape the world order? And what should America's response be? Well, in this season of change, we're watching a very visible demonstration of a spiritual conflict. We're seeing a collision of worldviews, of values, of good and evil, dark and light. China is celebrated as a tolerant place these days, but the government, not so much. Mao Zedong, with his great leap forward, resulted in 45 million deaths between 1958 and 1962. You got to let that sink in for a moment. In just 4 years, 45 million of his own people died. From 1980 until 2016, China had a one-child-only policy. Well, that resulted in more than 300 million abortions. Imagine a government that dictates how many children you can have. Even now, it's a very cruel system that the Chinese people are surviving under. It's impolite for us to say that because we benefit from much of the abuse that they suffer. We want to buy all the products we can from China as cheaply as we can get them. The Chinese government is communist, authoritarian, domineering. They practiced modern-day slavery, social control, and manipulation. History tells us that communism is not just another economic system. It's one of the most destructive, murderous expressions of human authority in history. And the people who advocate for socialism and communism today in our nation, in our biggest cities, well, they have to deny history to do so. And it's only our profound ignorance that gives them a place in the public square. The amendment that provides for freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom to worship God however we see fit without interference of the government, that's ours to guard. That's ours to watch over. The church in America, we better wake up to what's taking place within our borders. We recently had a pastor from South Korea visit our church here in Tennessee. To give you some context, the founding father of South Korea is a man who was educated by Christian missionaries, as were half of the founding fathers of Korea. They formed their constitution based off the U.S. Constitution. They put into that protection of religious liberty. Well, South Korea went from the poorest nation on the face of the earth upon its founding to the 6th wealthiest nation in the world. Now, the country's falling to a socialist government that just took over from the previous president, and now they're coming after the churches. There's a new bill that's been introduced in South Korea. It's called the Church Closure Act. It will allow the South Korean government to investigate churches without warrant, seize church properties, and then transfer them to the government. The pastor who visited our church, he was jailed for speaking out against the socialist government. He's still currently under investigation. Unless a miracle happens, he's expected to go back to jail in a few weeks. The change happening in South Korea is shocking. It's happened so rapidly since COVID. The communists are on the brink of taking over that country. South Korea has changed their education. They've changed their approach to citizenship. Chinese citizens, they no longer need a visa to enter South Korea, and within months, they're allowed to vote. South Korea is letting themselves be overrun by communists. It's because of sloppy immigration policies communists are invading. We're fooling ourselves if we think this can't happen here in America. It's already happening. Unfortunately, our nation has been on the wrong trajectory for quite a while. It didn't just start during this election season with the election of Mamdani as mayor of New York City. I never imagined that in this great nation of ours, there would be a day that churches would be told to close their doors because they were deemed non-essential. It happened during COVID. What made it worse was the church agreed to it. As Christians in America, what are we doing with the freedoms and liberties which we have? Christians have been reluctant to suggest that there's a proper way to see and understand the world. We've hesitated to say that Jesus is the only way to God. We've wanted to be embraced by the culture instead of being lights in the darkness. Well, the good news, God is moving. There are good things ahead. There are opportunities. So let's be fully engaged in doing His work everywhere we go, no matter what. And let's pray for that pastor and the people of South Korea. Let's not use our spiritual authority and who we've been called to become in Christ only to resolve our personal problems. Let's pray in cooperation with God, what He's doing in the earth, and we'll see His purposes continue to emerge. In a moment, we're going to be joined by China expert Gordon Chang. I'll be right back.
This year, we celebrate 250 years of God's faithfulness to our nation. From backyard picnics and ball games to laughter shared with family and friends, we've been given so many blessings to enjoy together. And in a world that feels increasingly divided, these moments remind us of what matters most: faith, freedom, family, and community. Alan Jackson Ministries wants to help you carry that message with you wherever you may go. This outdoor blanket and canvas tote bag are simple reminders of God's goodness and a way to spark meaningful conversations about faith and the hope we have in Him. Request your limited edition tote bag and outdoor blanket today with your gift of $100 or more at alanjackson.com or call 800-880-5102.
Tonight, we're joined by China expert Gordon Chang. Welcome to the show, Gordon.
Thank you so much, Alan.
You know, in the Iran conflict, President Trump continues to be willing to give diplomacy a chance. At least he said this was the last chance. What, in your opinion, is the cost of this determined diplomacy?
The cost is that the Iranians are pushing the United States around, and that's obvious to everybody. And the Chinese are just loving it because their general narrative is that the United States is in terminal decline. Now, I don't agree with that. I think Xi Jinping is wrong. But nonetheless, we do see the Iranian regime getting what it wants. And President Trump has been very generous, giving them off-ramps. But the cost is reputational, and it's around the world.
We've had several guests lately that have described an axis of cooperation that's taking place between China and Russia, Iran, North Korea. How should Americans understand what we're watching?
We are seeing the world divide, and we are seeing the bad actors cooperate closely, much more closely than in the past. And this presents an existential challenge to the United States. You know, we fought a lot of wars which were sort of like over there, and Americans really didn't care. But now we absolutely have to care because these countries mean to take us down, and we have to understand their intent, and we have to understand their power. And until we do that, although we're a far stronger society than any of those, and matter of fact, we're stronger than all of them put together, we can lose America because we're not defending ourselves with the vigor and determination necessary. We are not protecting our economy, we're not protecting our people, we are not dealing with known threats. So we can lose America.
Well, it seems to me under previous administrations, America was walking willingly towards globalism and really surrendering our leadership with an expression of a more America first policy. We're seeing this axis of cooperation emerge. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and it's great that President Trump has changed the focus of American diplomacy because he is putting America first. And by doing that, by the way, it is good for our partners, our friends and allies, because we were participating in a sort of this globalism, which was enabling the Chinese and the Russians and others when we should not have been supporting them. So I think it's very important in this change of focus. Now, as I mentioned, we got a lot more to do, but nonetheless, we're on the better path right now.
Well, there's a lot to do. Can you give us one or two ideas you would give to President Trump in responding?
First thing is we need to get the Iranian, the Russian, and the Chinese agents and operatives off our soil. We know that they're here. We know that they're operating. We know that they can do great damage. So for instance, a couple months ago, we had all those drones over our Air Force and Army bases, including Barksdale, which is critical because it's the home of Global Strike, which controls two legs of the U.S. nuclear triad. And we couldn't do anything about it. And we've seen this again at other military facilities. So we've got to stop who's ever operating those drones, probably the Chinese, but somebody, and somebody hostile, has been able to take over the skies over our Air Force bases.
You know, it's sometimes unsettling. It doesn't seem that we have the will to even deport illegal aliens. So now you're talking about identifying and removing, deporting people who are hostile actors on behalf of other governments. Do you think the American people have the strength of will to do that?
I only hope so. We didn't have the strength of will to deal with al-Qaeda, even after it killed 6 Americans in 1993 by bombing the North Tower of the World Trade Center. We only had the political will after we lost 2,977 Americans on one day. Now, China is much more powerful than al-Qaeda ever was. But we do need direction from the president to say China is our enemy. It's not our friend. It's not a competitor. It's not an adversary. It's an enemy. And until we do that, the Chinese are running around our country with secret Chinese biological weapons facilities, police stations, and God knows what else is occurring.
Well, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has had a comment about China and Iran. Listen to what he said.
Nothing that China has done has in any way changed the trajectory of of what you're seeing in terms of the conflicts we're having with Iran. And in fact, in some cases, they've actually been quite cooperative with regards to what they potentially could have done but didn't do.
How would you frame China's engagement with our war with Iran?
Those are not the words that I would use. We know that China has allowed Iran to use its satellites for targeting purposes. It's almost like 99.999% sure that the 6 Americans who died on March 1st in Kuwait died as a result of Chinese targeting. I don't care about the trajectory of the war. I care about American lives, and the loss of any American life is unacceptable, and any country that participates in the killing of Americans has to meet the severe power of the United States. So those words, I think, were inappropriate.
Well, it's been reported that the Trump administration is drafting a ban on U.S. imports of Chinese data center devices. How important is that? Critically
important. We have a very significant lead in data centers. We had, as of June, 4,527 data centers, and China only had 449. But China can take our data centers offline and maybe even sabotage them because of the inverters and the other equipment that we have imported and put into those data centers. So yes, this is really important. And along with that, the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, was also banning humanoid robots from China and the 4-legged robots from China. So this is really good. Brendan Carr is a hero. He's the FCC chairman.
It's often stated that whoever wins this AI race is going to control the future of the globe. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yes, I would. And that's the reason why we have to stop helping China with its AI. We help China with its AI 2 ways. One of them is that we sell them advanced chips. The Trump administration has given export permits for the sale of the H200 NVIDIA chip to China. It's not NVIDIA's best, but it's better than what the Chinese have. And also we see all of this cooperation in Silicon Valley with China. You know, the people in Silicon Valley, what they're doing is despicable, but at the end of the day, they neither set nor implement American foreign policy. That's the job that we elected President Trump to do. And I'd like to see Trump prohibit these contacts between Silicon Valley and China's AI companies.
Well, Gordon, we need to take a short break. Will you stand by for another segment?
Absolutely.
And for those of you watching, if you've got a phone nearby, pick it up. You can log on to ajnow.com. Send me an email. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. I'll be right back. I've learned as a pastor there's a tremendous difference in a crowd and a community of faith. When people decide to step out of the crowd and invest their time and their resources, they become a part of a community and it changes their lives. Well, I want to give you that invitation. I'm grateful you're a part of the crowd who watch the ministry. I want to ask you to consider becoming a monthly ministry partner. I believe if you'll make that regular commitment to what God is doing through this ministry, it'll bring momentum to your spiritual life and it will help us reach more people than we've ever reached with the gospel before. America is turning 250 years old. That's something that should unify us. We have so much to celebrate. There is no place like America. Our freedoms and liberties, they are unmatched in this world. Everything that's good about America, our laws, our opportunities, the prosperity we've enjoyed, well, they've come to us because of our faith. We've created a series of emails celebrating 250 years of our country. Find out how Christianity has played a role in this nation from its founding until now. You'll receive a new email each week throughout the series. Each one is designed to help you see our blessings and our heritage in a new way, how faith has played a powerful role all the way through. It's one way we're celebrating America's 250th. We hope you'll join us. You can sign up now at alanjackson.com/250. We're back now with the premier expert on China, Gordon Chang. Gordon, we recently had a pastor from South Korea visit us here in Tennessee. He was jailed in recent months simply because he'd spoken out against their current government. I've learned a lot since he was here about how communism is infiltrating South Korea. Apparently, you can enter that country if you're Chinese without a visa, and in some of the provinces, you can vote within 4 months. So their government's becoming increasingly communist. It seems unbelievable. Is that a foreshadowing of what they'd like to do in America?
Well, it certainly is. And South Korea could actually become the next Venezuela. You know, Venezuela was a free, prosperous capitalist society. And then it was taken over by Chavez and Maduro. Lee Jae-myung, the president of South Korea, we know he abhors Americans, and we can see that from the statements that he has made over the years. He's also surrounded himself now with people who are pro-Chinese, pro-North Koreans. They look like communists. And so we have to worry that we could lose South Korea. The Chinese are trying to do the same thing to us, to infiltrate our society. They put a lot of money into affecting our politics. They've been extremely successful. So for instance, they were supporting Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Party primaries in 2020, and they supported Biden over Trump that year. And you can say that the only person who had a vote that counted in 2020 in the presidential election was the Chinese leader, not any American. So yes, we have to make sure that we eliminate those contacts that the regime has with us, because they're flooding our society and they're overwhelming us right now.
Well, the Democratic Socialist candidates have recently run a number of their primaries. It seems they're favored by China's regimes as well. How do we combat that spread of communism here in America?
There are so many things that we have to do, but one of them is we've got to get the Chinese regime out of our society, which means closing their 4 remaining consulates, stripping the embassy staff down to next to nothing, going after their businesses here, closing the secret police stations. I believe that there is a 3rd undiscovered Chinese biological weapons facility in our country, and I don't see the FBI looking for it. But the other thing is we have to stop the money flow. And the Department of Justice is now investigating Neville Roy Singham, who is an American citizen, but he is resident in Shanghai and he coordinates his policies with the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which is the part of the party that subverts foreign governments. So we've got to go after this money flow. There's just so many things, Alan. The list is endless about what we need to do to insulate our society from these malicious Chinese political influence and cognitive warfare efforts.
I've read a number of reports about significant Chinese investment in our universities, influencing the minds of these young people, giving them a favorable opinion, not just towards China, but communism in general. Is that as broad and spread as it seems to be reported?
It is, and it's part of a problem. The big problem is that after the Cold War, conservatives, those people who believed in freedom, we just let our educational system be taken over by people who did not like the United States, who abhorred us, who hated us. So the communists are playing on a field which is ripe for them. So we've got a lot to do. We've got to go after the Chinese money that's coming in. We got to go after the Chinese Confucius institutes that remain, the Confucius classrooms in our secondary schools. There were 500 of them, Alan, of those Confucius classrooms at a very critical point in the development of our students. So it just goes, the list is almost endless right now because the communists have really spent a lot of effort influencing our politics because they believe they can take us down.
Well, I think it's worth noting that that's a one-way street. China's not opening their doors for us to send advocates for capitalism or advocates for Christianity or advocates for the Western way of life. It's a very one-way street, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is because, for instance, we can't have our media in China except in very, very limited circumstances. So, for instance, you can get CNN in China, but only in foreign hotels. You can't get it broadly. But we can get all sorts of Chinese Central Television affiliates here. You get China Daily on the street. You get Chinese apps here like TikTok. Our apps are not allowed in China. Confucius Institutes, which you referred to, they're allowed in our country. There's still about 10 of them remaining. But you can't have a Reagan Institute, for instance, in China. It's just lack of reciprocity. It goes across the board of our relationships with China. And one other thing. No American can own a square inch of land in China, but the Chinese can own the rest of this country, and they're buying it up really fast, especially farm and ranch land.
Well, FBI Director Kash Patel recently announced that the FBI has forged new law enforcement partnerships with China and Russia in hopes of combating international transnational crime. What's your take on this?
This is truly misguided. The Chinese regime is criminal. They're behind the fentanyl gangs. That's a Communist Party project. The Communist Party is behind the Chinese money laundering gangs that have taken over the global business for that, not just drug money. So I don't know how you can cooperate with the master criminal. We should be taking these guys down, not cooperating with them. And China has sufficient opportunities to corrupt the FBI as it is, but we're giving them more because we have these exchange visits. We have their guys working in our country. This is just wrong on every level.
Well, Gordon, I thank you for your time today. I appreciate your courage and the insights you bring.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
We'll be back in a moment with your emails. I want to give you a personal invitation to join my podcast, Culture and Christianity.
You don't compromise the truth, but you say it where the people know that you care about them.
We're trying to understand how to take our faith outside the walls of the church and live it out in the marketplace.
I just never understood the double standard because they punished me while my peers were allowed to talk about how devastated they were that Roe versus Wade was overturned.
I brought in some friends, people that are trying to do this on a regular basis.
They're never going to stop me because the truth is the truth. I'd rather be on God's side than to be a coward.
We've been living in a season of unprecedented deception, propaganda, manipulation.
Our best option was to run. We were timing ourselves. I was trying to think, how can I protect my kids?
Well, I want to be a part of seeing culture and Christianity intersect. I hope you'll join the podcast soon. Thank you for taking the time to share your emails, your thoughts and opinions. They're always a highlight. A viewer on a YouTube episode with Commander Kirk Lippold responded, "When did Iran start being honorable and telling the truth? I missed it. No sane person understands Cory Booker." Well, I couldn't agree more about Iran and their lack of truthfulness. There's a principle I think we should all remember, that evil only responds to a power greater than itself. You can't bargain with evil. You can't negotiate with evil. You have to give an expression of authority and power, and they will yield. Folks, God's moving in the earth. Let's be sure we join him. Thank you for spending a few moments with us. God bless and good night.